Welcome to the last week of class. We'll be covering chapters 16 and 17, which cover the medical specialties of ophthalmology, optometry, and otorhinolaryngology. So let's start with chapter 16, ophthalmology and optometry. So for your learning objectives, you are to be able to describe the medical specialties of ophthalmology and optometry, understand the function of the eye, define ophthalmology-related combining forms, prefixes, and suffixes, identify structures treated in ophthalmology, build ophthalmology medical terms from word parts, explain ophthalmology medical terms, and use ophthalmology abbreviations. Ophthalmology is the diagnosis and treatment of diseases of the eye and vision. Ophthalmologists are medical doctors, either MDs or DOs, who have completed at least 4 years of specialized training after medical school. They're involved in all aspects of eye care. They examine vision, prescribe lenses, diagnose and treat eye conditions, and also operate on the eye. Optometry is the assessment of vision. Optometrists attend a school of optometry for 4 years to obtain a Doctor of Optometry degree, or OD. They can prescribe lenses, treat glaucoma, corneal damage, and visual skill problems. They also provide pre- and post-surgical care and screen for eye diseases. The eyeball is the organ responsible for vision. Light rays enter the eye and travel through the cornea, pupil, iris, and lens. The rays then produce an image on the retina, and the optic nerve carries this image to the brain. The conjunctivas, eyelids, and lacrimal glands are accessory structures that protect the eyeball. Let's get a closer look at the structures of the eye and the orbit. The sclera is the outermost layer of the eyeball, and it's a tough, fibrous white tissue of the eye. The cornea is the transparent anterior portion of the sclera that bends light rays, helping to focus them on the retina. And the anterior chamber is behind the cornea. It's filled with watery aqueous humor. The choroid layer is the middle layer of the eyeball. That's what contains the iris, pupil, and ciliary body. The iris is the muscular colored portion of the eye, and it's what changes pupil size to regulate the passage of light into the eyeball. The pupil is an opening in the iris. It is in the place where light enters the eye's interior. And then the ciliary body is a muscular ring around the lens, and it changes the shape of the lens in order to focus light. The lens is a transparent structure that bends light rays in order to focus them on the retina. It's attached to the choroid layer, but it's not part of the choroid layer. The posterior chamber is behind the lens, and it is a large open cavity filled with vitreous humor. The retina is the innermost layer of the eye. It contains rods that see gray tones in dim light, and it also contains cones that see color in bright light. The macula lutea is found on the retina. The fovea centralis on the macula lutea is the point of where clearest vision is. The conjunctiva is a mucous membrane that protects the anterior surface of the eyeball, and it primarily protects the cornea and turns underneath to line the eyelids. The eyelids cover each eyeball, and they are folds of skin that close to protect the eyes. They are fringed with cilia, or eyelashes. The lacrimal glands secrete tears that moisten and cleanse the eye's anterior surface. The lacrimal canals drain tears to the lacrimal sacs. Tears then drain to the nasolacrimal duct and the nasal cavity. Here are some ophthalmology combining forms that you need to know. Aqueo refers to water, blepharo, eyelid, choroido, choroid, conjunctivo, conjunctiva, choreo, pupil, corneo, cornea, cyclo, ciliary body, dacryo, tear, iro or irido, iris, keratoconus, cornea, lacrimo, tear drop, oculo eye, ophthalmo eye, opto eye or vision, phaco lens, pupillo pupil, retina, retino retina, sclero sclera, tono means tension or pressure, and vitreo glassy. And here are some additional combining forms: adeno, gland; amblio, dull or dim; angio, vessel; chromo, color; cryo, cold; cysto, sac; diplo is double; myco, fungus; naso, nose; photo, light; and zero, dry. And let's review some suffixes: al, pertaining to; ar, pertaining to; ari, pertaining to; ectomy, surgical removal; graphy, the process of recording; ia, condition; ik, pertaining to; ishin is a specialist; itis, inflammation; lith, stone; logis, one who studies; logi, study of; lysis, to destroy; malacia, abnormal softening; meter, instrument for measuring; and metry, the process of measuring. Ophia, vision; osis is an abnormal condition; otomy, cutting into; us, pertaining to; pathy, disease; pexy, surgical fixation; phobia, fear; plasty, surgical repair; plesia is paralysis; ptosis, drooping; rhea, discharge; sclerosis, hardening; scope, instrument for viewing; and scopy, the process of visually examining. Here are some prefixes: a, without; an, without; hemi, half; hyper means excessive; intra means within; micro means small. Okay, let's look at chapter 17, which covers otorhinolaryngology. And reviewing your learning objectives for chapter 17, describe the medical specialty of otorhinolaryngology, understand the function of the ears, nose, and throat, define otorhinolaryngology related combining forms, prefixes, and suffixes, identify the organs and structures treated in otorhinolaryngology, build otorhinolaryngology medical terms from word parts, explain otorhinolaryngology medical terms, use otorhinolaryngology abbreviations. Otorhinolaryngology focuses on the head and neck regions of the body. Doctors who are otorhinolaryngologists are also referred to as ear, nose, and throat doctors, so that's why we see the abbreviation here, ENT. The physician is an otorhinolaryngologist, and again, we can abbreviate it ENT. ENTs diagnose and treat hearing and balance problems, swallowing, voice and airway problems, and tumors of the head and neck. ENT is concerned with the ears and nose. The ears are responsible for hearing and balance, and the nose is responsible for smell and bringing air into the body. The ENT is also concerned with throat structures. The pharynx carries air to the larynx and the trachea, and food and drink to the esophagus. The larynx is responsible for speech, and then the trachea brings air to the lungs. Let's start by looking at the ear. You have an outer ear, which is what we see, and then a middle ear and an inner ear. The tympanic membrane is what separates the outer ear and the middle ear. It converts sound waves to vibrations that move the bones of the middle ear, and these bones are called ossicles. And the ossicles vibrate in order: first the malleus, then the incus, and the stapes. Vibrations are then transferred to the oval window and the inner ear. The inner ear contains the snail-shaped cochlea. The cochlea is the sensory organ for hearing. Fluid in the cochlea conducts vibrations. Vibrations then strike hair cells in the cochlea, bending small hairs and stimulating nerve endings. The nerve endings send electrical impulses to the brain via the cochlear nerve. Okay, now let's look at other organs. The air that you breathe enters the respiratory tract at the nasal cavity. The nasal septum divides the nasal cavity in half. There's a mucous membrane that lines the cavity. Cell receptors are housed in this cavity. The paranasal sinuses are connected to the nasal cavity. They also act as an echo chamber for sound production, and mucous membranes line these sinuses. The pharynx, which is part of the throat, moves both food and air. It contains 3 sets of tonsils that protect the body from foreign invaders. You have your adenoids, or your pharyngeal tonsils, the palatine tonsils, and the lingual tonsils. The auditory tube opens into the pharynx, and it connects the pharynx and the middle ear, which equalizes middle ear pressure during swallowing. The larynx connects the pharynx to the trachea. It contains the vocal cords. The epiglottis protects it from food and drink. The trachea carries air to the lungs, and mucous membranes line this tube. Okay, here are some otorhinolaryngology combining forms. Adenoido refers to adenoids, audio hearing, audito hearing, oro ear, cochleo cochlea, epiglotto epiglottis, laryngo larynx or the voice box. Myringo is the tympanic membrane or the eardrum, naso nose, oto ear, pharyngo pharynx or the throat, rhino nose, sinuso sinus, tonsillo tonsil, tracheo trachea, tympano tympanic membrane or the eardrum. And here are some additional combining forms that'll help you with this chapter. Gastrostomach, mycofungus, neuronerve, pyopus. Okay, again, reviewing some suffixes. Al pertaining to, algia pain, R pertaining to, EO pertaining to ectomy, surgical removal, emetic pertaining to vomit, gram, a record, ick pertaining to itis, inflammation, logis, one who studies, logi, the study of, megaly means enlarged, meter is an instrument for measuring, metry is the process of measuring, oma is a mass or a tumor, ori is pertaining to. Osis means abnormal condition, osmia, sense of smell, otomy, cutting into, phonia, voice, plasty, surgical repair, plesia is paralysis, rhea, discharge, rhexis, rupture, sclerosis, hardening, scope, instrument for viewing, scopy, the process of visually examining, spasm is involuntary muscle contraction, and stenosis means narrowing. Okay, and now some prefixes. A without, and without. Anti, against. D without. Dis means abnormal, difficult, or painful. Endo means within or inner. Pan means all, and para means beside or two like parts of a pair. That's it for this video. In our next video, we will be building medical terms based on chapters 16 and 17. So let me encourage you now to go to your book and try to build the medical terms from the word parts, and then come back and see how you did.